Welcome to We Hear Her. I am Erin Trenbeth Murray.
And I am Jennifer Bean.
We're here today with another amazing woman who's sharing her story and insights to lessons learned.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Jennifer Bean. We're happy you're here listening to We Hear Her. Today I'm with Neylan McBaine, who is a small business owner and advocate, and I can't wait to learn more about what that means. Tell us where you're at right now.
So about 7 months ago, I actually acquired a small software company, and this was a brand new journey for me. I've worked in marketing for large retail companies, small retail companies, online, offline. I've worked in an advertising agency before, but this has really been a new journey to actually acquire a small company and take it over myself and run it all on my own. So it's been a great adventure.
And it's called Duet Partner.
Now it's called Duet Partner.
Now it is.
Yes, I renamed it. It's a company that provides studio management tools for independent music teachers. So think your neighborhood piano teacher who has 50 students that she's juggling all during the week. It helps her manage her roster, manage her communications, her billing, her calendaring, her tax preparation, mileage tracking if she's driving to lessons, a studio website for her, all of that. So
wonderful. And you're loving it so far?
I am. I don't think I would ever considered acquiring a business. I come from the background in business where if you sell a company, you do it through an IPO and it's billions of dollars and some institutional investor or VC might get involved. But this, through the Small Business Administration program, these are businesses that are 5, 6, maybe 7 figures that you and I can acquire through a loan. And, of course, paying back the loan is definitely at the front of my mind all the time.
Sure.
But it's manageable. And now I get to have this really wonderful lifestyle business that I get to grow for who knows how long.
And evolve into what you want it to be.
Exactly.
I have a feeling you've been doing that for quite a bit of your life. Tell me a little bit about what was before Duet Partner, and let's go all the way back.
Okay, yes, I've had a very varied career, and I think for women of our generation, that's a wonderful thing that we're able to do these days, really, because I started off as an English major in college, as a reader and a writer, but then I went into marketing, and I started at Walmart.com, actually, in the Bay Area, and I didn't even know what Walmart was. I had never been in a Walmart. I was raised in New York City. I thought Walmart was Walgreens because that's what we had in New York. But I ended up having an amazing apprenticeship there for about 7 years right out of college, where I really learned how to do consumer marketing at the very highest level.
Wonderful.
And so that was really fantastic. I moved from there to a small children's clothing company, and then I started having children. Well, actually, after my third child was born was when I actually took some time off and kind of reassessed. And in that period, I actually started a nonprofit and was able to find something that was much more flexible for my time with my young children at home. Throughout the last 10 or 15 years, I've also gone back to agency life. I went to an advertising agency, back in-house at another educational technology startup. So a lot of different things, but I've gone back and forth between the for-profit businesses and nonprofit endeavors for really the last 15 years.
Wonderful. So you moved from the Bay Area. You were raised there, is that right?
I was raised in New York City.
Oh, that's right. New York City.
And then I spent my post-college years in San Francisco. Then we went to Boston for my husband's graduate school, back to New York, and then we moved here to Utah 13 years ago. So when I moved to Utah, I had never lived in a house.
Oh my goodness, that is an interesting bit of trivia.
Yeah, and let me tell you, apartments are underrated. I can't wait to get back to an apartment. So.
Where you have someone who can help you manage your property.
Yes, exactly. I don't know what the green stuff is out there, but
somebody mow it.
Somebody do something with that. Exactly.
So tell me a little bit about growing up in New York City.
Yeah, so I was the only child of a Wall Street lawyer and a professional opera singer. So my mom sang for 18 years at the Metropolitan Opera, and I was raised to be her accompanist in residence, is what she called me. So
I love it.
So I was just on demand accompanying, but was a serious pianist all through high school and college, and it was an amazing way to grow up. I mean, being raised as an arts kid in New York is the best. And it's what I love. It's what my family loves. We love the performing and the visual arts. That's kind of our family culture.
Yeah.
So, you know, my parents separated when I was young, and I was really just kind of, you know, my mom's BFF, and the two of us just had
We're
a
the
lot of
best
fun
duo,
together.
huh?
We were a great duo, yeah.
Was she a good mentor to you? Do you look
I
at
mean,
her in that way?
tremendous. I mean, this was
Yeah.
New York in the 1980s, you know, and so obviously we had a lot of, we had friends who were professional women. But, you know, my mom was a mentor and example to everyone,
Yeah.
even, you know, even outside of the artistic community. I mean, I went to an all-girls school for 12 years, one of the prep schools on the East Side, and you know, even my friends from school remember when my mom came to present to us, right? Because
Oh.
she just had a wonderful, confident personality. She had this international career, and so even for
And
this
something unique.
and something very unique, yeah.
Yeah.
And they remember her singing for us, and
Oh.
so I was always extremely proud of her, and it never really crossed our minds that she was balancing things. I mean, she would talk about
Yeah.
balance and how she was achieving it, but at the same time, she was always very realistic and honest about the fact that she had one child and a very flexible job.
Right.
Right.
And that's what kind of made it
Yeah.
all possible.
And
made
I
it
had
work.
nannies the whole time I was growing up who I loved, and it was great. But she was always very upfront about that. Like, I'm not, you know, running home to cook dinner from scratch for my 5 children after a full day at the office kind of thing. That was not what was going on.
That was not what it
Yeah.
was. What do you admire most about your mom looking back now and realizing that you're a mom now, and you know the conversation could have looked different
Yeah.
because of what the reality brings?
My mom just had so much self-awareness and just confidence and presence of mind.
Yeah.
She just knew exactly what she was doing, and nobody was going to tell her that she couldn't. And it wasn't in any way angry or a sort of, you know, she wasn't, you know, burning her bra or,
Right.
you know, and whatever. She came of age in the 1970s really and started her career in the early 70s. So she didn't take on that sort of persona. She took on the very best of that sort of mid-century feminist movement, and just practiced it in her own individual, private way.
Yeah.
And that was really, I mean, I just kind of grew up in that aura and just assumed that I could do that.
And
too.
it was a gift maybe you were given without even really accepting it.
Yeah.
Living beside that had to have a great impact. What do you cherish about being a mother?
Oh, being a mother now. I have 3 teenage daughters.
3 teenage daughters.
And
Let's just
I
all take a breath for a
love
minute.
teenagers. I actually, you know,
yeah.
I'm having a lot more fun now than I've ever had at any other time of life. I was really happy to have a job to go back to when they were really little.
Right. You're like, that's my break. That's my true
yeah.
vacation.
It's true. And so as they've gotten older, I've required and kind of maneuvered more and more flexibility in my work.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting because a lot of times in the United States, at least, we say, oh, the time that you want to take, you know, is when they're babies and newborns and toddlers. You want to be there for them. I think it's the exact opposite. And I'm really glad that I did it that way. And it was a little bit by happenstance. That's just kind of when the jobs were and what. But I definitely struggled when they were little. I was definitely like that because you're in your peak ambitious years. You know, I was in my late 20s and early 30s, and so now I feel like I've climbed the ladder. I've got a skill set. I feel a little bit at peace with what I've accomplished so far, right? And now they're so interesting and fun, and they still need drives places, but it's more like the emotional support and just,
I agree.
And, you know, making sure they have their dresses for winter formal and that I'm hosting 50 kids at my house on Friday night, you know, all of that stuff.
Right.
And
it's time.
It is.
It's always time. And I'm straddling the fence a little bit. I have a 22-year-old and then 18 and 16. But I will agree with you. I took that window of time when they were younger to be at home, avoid daycare, some of those kinds of things. But gosh, standing beside them in life right now, is a really unique experience, and one that I certainly want to be present for as well, right? And
well, you're a few years ahead of me, but I mean, I'm not expecting motherhood to end, you know, when they
right.
go off to college, right?
It better not, because I
Yeah.
still call my mom.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot more to it even in the next few years.
Yeah. What do you see as the challenges that your girls are facing that may or may not be different or harder or easier than the ones you faced? But what do you see that they're really, working to navigate right now?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely,
It's a big question.
I think it's very hard to be a kid of you know, any identity at this point. Um, and I think a lot of people would say social media, but I mean, there was plenty of image pressure for me as a girl growing up in New York City in the 1980s. And, not to diminish what my daughters are going through with social media, but
it existed.
It existed.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, they may, teens today might poo-poo, the Cosmo on the newsstand is like, that's not the same thing. And maybe it's not. But there was a lot of that pressure on me as a girl in the 1980s. What I didn't have, I think, is this broader context of geopolitical and climate sort of trauma coming down from the outside.
Yeah.
Like, I just felt like, oh, the world's just going to keep going the way it is.
This is
like,
normal.
There
There's
might be some
wrong with
uprising in Poland and the wall's going to fall in Berlin, but things are just going to go right. And my girls feel every day that like something in their future is going to be different, right? There's going to be a sort of looming aspect of like, what are we going to have to handle? What are we, and it could be, the earthquake we had here, but then then I think obviously COVID was just the manifestation of that come true in their lives, right? And all just geopolitical elements that are just so much closer to home because they can get on their phone and read the news.
You know what? That's such a good way to put that, and that in some ways, it's I look about what my kids are aware of and know and have context about. And it's something that, for me, I look back and feel like maybe I was a little bit naive to that because the access and the platforms weren't there for that.
Totally.
And
you saw the Berlin Wall fall on the nightly news, and that was it. It's not like you were reading commentary about it on your phone at school for the next 2 months, or whatever.
And then everyone had an opinion and was taking a platform on it.
Yeah.
I know.
You're like, yay, the wall fell. Okay, moving on.
Exactly.
I don't know. At least that's what I did.
You know what? And that's kind of how I remember it too. And there wasn't, for better or worse, not necessarily a huge global context to what. And I think that's such a good point that for a multitude of reasons, kids are feeling like there's just something out there that's looming and maybe at the point of breaking and very fragile. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the Berlin Wall is a bad example because that was a happy thing, right?
Right.
We're talking about like sad things
but
looming on them.
But even still, it is. It also makes you realize that almost every issue can be a big issue right now. I think that's another challenge. Yeah. Who is your role model? You may have already spoken of her, but I was just wondering who you would name as one of your most impressionable women in your life.
Yeah. Well, obviously my mother. I've spoken and written a lot about my mother. My mother was a role model to a lot of people and a public figure who a lot of people knew and respected. But there are a couple of other women. One of her close friends, in fact, who I grew up with in New York, who works in finance and was a real pioneer in Wall Street finance herself, is a great role model of mine. Locally here, I've looked up to Ruth Todd for a decade. Are you familiar with Ruth?
A little bit. Yeah. I'm sure you could teach me a lot.
Yeah,
but
she's at New Skin now, and she's been a great mentor to me and a big champion of really every aspect of work that I've done. So yeah, I think it just mostly just personal acquaintances who, but that's one reason I'm excited about this project because. Here in Utah, it is less common to be able to connect with professional women who are local here and who are
Right.
excelling in their industries. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm
But
excited
you've
to be
done a
part
lot of
this.
work in that area. Tell me a little bit about, is it a Better Utah?
Better Days.
Better
Yes.
Days. That's what it is.
It was called Better Days 2020.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about what you learned about Utah women.
Yeah.
We are
So
pioneers through and through, aren't we?
we continued to be pioneers
Yes.
after we arrived in the valley. So in about 2016, a friend of mine and I read the biography of Emmeline B. Wells, and she is a name that we hope is a household name here in Utah eventually. But she was a woman who lived who came across the plains with the Mormon pioneers from Nauvoo when she was about 16, 17. She got here when she was about 18 years old. She'd already lost a baby and a husband at that time.
At such a young
She was a plural wife of a leader in the church at that time. And over the next decades, sort of after we leave the pioneers behind and we get into the later 19th century when Utah Territory is trying to become a state, she rises as the suffrage leader here in Utah. But not just here in Utah. The thing to realize about the Utah women and the Utah suffrage movement here was that it was a leader in the national movement.
We were leading other states.
We were leading the nation. In fact, Emmeline was one of Susan B. Anthony's right-hand women in traveling around the country and advocating for the right for women to participate civically. And the reason that we had that high position is because Utah was the first place a woman voted under an equal suffrage law on February 14th, 1870. And so we were reading about this in this book, and she's from California and I'm from New York, and we're like, everybody who was raised in Utah must know this, right? This must just be because we're not from Utah.
Yeah.
But no, like, we didn't find it anywhere in the Utah history curriculum. Okay, well, there you go.
I learned it from you. Yeah.
Yeah, not in the Utah history curriculum, taught in schools, not even mentioned in the Utah history textbook, just an absolute silencing of the story. And our diagnosis is mostly it has to do with the fact that the work for suffrage here in Utah was inextricably intertwined with the practice of plural marriage by the early Latter-day Saints. And so that's just like, we don't know what to do with that. We're like, we're not going to touch that.
We'll put that over there for a minute.
But, what's happened is that we silenced all these women's stories because of who they were married to, which is a very anti-feminist stance to take.
Yes.
So we started a 4-year project to educate Utahns about this remarkable history in women's advocacy. And in preparation for 2020, which was the 150th anniversary of that first female vote here in Utah. And then it was the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment nationwide, which was the amendment that gave women the right to vote in federal elections across the country.
I love that you've sort of uncovered this. Not even being a Utah native, you've taken off sort of that stigma of what our women have provided. Do you have any last and final thoughts? They probably won't be final. I love that you're constantly evolving and tracking with what's coming in current, but that you would like Utah women to know about who we are and where we come from and what's ahead.
Yeah, I think most, having lived here for 13 years, I find this tendency in Utah women to feel very much alone and just feel like they have to kind of claw their way through a path that they forge for themselves without the support of, without the emotional or financial or cultural support of their community. And I think that that's, far off, too often the case.
Yeah.
However, I mean, what the purpose of Better Days 2020 was, and what I hope to be able to convey to Utah women generally, is that we've done this all already. Like, you might not be, you might not have the volume of mentors and examples around today, but you can look in the past, and those women, I mean, they can be your sort of, guardian angels as you forge whatever path you want today, because it was an incredibly fruitful and rich and progressive time here in Utah, specifically around women and women's careers and women's advocacy, women's education, and women's leadership. And that's in our DNA as Utahns.
I was just going to say, that is something that I like knowing is sort of in our spirit.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, Neylan, thank you so much for sharing what all you've done, what's inspired you. I'm excited to continue working with you.
I am too.
And thank you for all the work you've done to bring to light what Utah women are all about.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you for taking time to hear her. Join our efforts and learn more at womenwhosucceed.org. A big thank you to our sponsor, the Clark and Christine Ivory Foundation.